I hope you are fine. Today we're talking about lesson one about friction force. We said before that friction force it is a force between two surfaces when they are touching each other. When you imagine that you wrap your hands, what happened? Yeah, between your hands is a friction force. Also, when you imagine that the car move over the road, also it's a force is called a friction force. This force exists between two surfaces when they're touching each other. If the motion in this direction, so the friction force in the opposite direction. So friction force act or exists between two surfaces and it applied in the opposite direction of the movement of the object. And this force slowed down the moving object. That means it slowed down the object until it stopped. Yes. When we ride the bike, uh, what happened? It moved. Yeah. And also there's a force between the bike or and the road. It's called friction force. And this force exists between the tire of the bike and the road. And this force acts in the opposite direction to slow down its movement and not to slip down. There are three types of friction force: friction force between solids, friction force between air and objects, and friction force between water and objects. Let's start with the first type, which is friction force between solids. We said if the movement like in this direction towards the right, that means the friction force. Yeah, exactly. To the left in the opposite direction of the movement. So the motion of the bike is in direction and friction force in opposite direction. As a friction force is a force that arises between two surfaces when they touch each other, and it's also in the opposite direction of movement. If your dad give moving force or movement force or pushing force to the car bigger than the friction force between the car tire and the road, so of course the car will move. So if the movement force or the pushing force here is greater than the friction force, the body will move. If the friction force is smaller than the movement force, the body will if the friction force is smaller than the movement force, so the body will move. But if the friction force is more, so the body will not move. That means if you imagine that your dad give when he ride the car and give pushing force or movement force on the car, then the greater than the friction force between the car tire and the road, so the car will move. And if your dad give or if your dad give less moving force than the friction force of the car, slow down till it stop. Yeah, and not move. There are factors that affect the friction force. There are three factors affect the friction force, which are surface area of moving objects. Yeah, as surface area increase, friction force increase. Also, type of material surface, even if it's a rough surface or smooth surface, and also speed of the body. So how many factors? Surface area, type of material surface, and speed of the body. The first factor here is surface area of the moving object. If the surface area increases, friction force will increase and vice versa. That means there is a relation between them. They are direct relation. This increase and the surface area will increase. Surface area is increased, that means friction force will increase. There is a direct relation between them. Also, the second factor, which is the type of material surface. Imagine which one is have more friction force, in wooden surface or in ceramic surface. Yeah, of course, in wooden surface, as wooden surface is a rough surface and have more friction force than ceramic surface, which have a less friction force. So the friction force increase on the rough surface than than smooth surface. Here on sandy floor, it will move less distance because they have more friction force. Uh, Also, the third factor is speed of objects. Yeah, as the speed increase, friction force will increase, and they are direct relation between each other. Second part of the lesson, which is a disadvantage and advantage of friction force, and we'll talk about inshallah next week. Thank you, and good luck.